Okay to start, Buddy.
I beg your pardon?
I just started the recording.
All right. Okay, then welcome everybody to another session of a weekly meeting of research team at Global Technopolitics Forum on March 28, 2021. So let's start the meeting with 5G project and Leo. I know that ECHO has uploaded a report and I hope that you have seen it. Leo, would you like to talk about your project?
Yeah. So for this week for 5G, I read an article about 5G strategies for developing countries. So it was kind of a note for the more of the policy side of 5G. And just to keep it short, the key points I got from it, first one was that operators in developing countries are very reluctant to proceed with 5G rollout. And this is mostly because of the unknown existing returns of 5G. Because we talk about the host of technologies that 5G will enable, the Internet of Things like smart cities, driverless cars, and while these new technologies are very exciting, as we know, the returns are still very unknown. So this is making it very hard to incentivize operators in developing countries, and they're making them very hesitant to proceed with 5G rollout. But that being said, the article did talk about some of the unique factors in the decision making that lower income countries need to take because their levels of infrastructure for telecommunication networks are less robust than for higher income countries. And one of them is to pretty much reduce capital expenditure. And to do this, they have to consider a kind of 5G light solution. And this is what Paul talked to me about, where instead of building a completely new 5G network, to include some elements of the 5G RAN and integrating that into the existing 4G network. And that was kind of a recurring theme in the article I read. And also a recurring thing I saw in part of ECHO's report, where she talked about development in Latin America, saying that right now, even though some countries in Latin America are going for a full 5G rollout, it seems that, especially in rural areas, some countries will have to develop their 4G networks first and integrate 5G into that existing 4G network just to cut costs. So that's kind of what I've been doing this week, and also starting on outlining my presentation.
Do you have a deadline for your presentation?
Yeah, I know I'm supposed to send my slides by April 2nd, so next Friday. Okay. So it should be done by then. Yeah.
Okay. If you needed any help, then you can reach me on a Slack. Okay. Any comments, Greg?
No. I thought both his and ECHO's reports were interesting.
Yeah, and I like the graphics there. Maura?
I think the one thing to think about then, which is where your research brings us to a really interesting conclusion, is whatever they do in 5G Lite as a stopgap solution may lock them into those providers down the road. So I think for us, that's the interesting piece. It's just like, once you buy the F-35 instead of the Chinese or the Russian made, you've got a operating and maintenance tail that you're kind of locked into that technology. So I think the real focus for the geopolitical question on developing countries with 5G Lite is going to be that question. Will a choice now lock them into a vendor later? Because if it does, then that means geopolitically there will be a lot more tussle now, whereas if down the road they can be flexible, well, then maybe it's not worth the geopolitical fight right now, and you put that off and you focus on the developed countries and the geopolitical fight now. So I think your research has really pinpointed the geopolitical question around the technology that we'll want to look at. So I think you guys are doing a fabulous job getting us, narrowing us down to the real issue here. So great job. I have not provided comments yet. I'm still catching up, but I will be, and I'm also happy to meet with you guys to help moving presentation forward. I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but you guys are doing a great job so far.
Thank you. And yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head with the issue of possible dependency. And another wrinkle to that is we're seeing countries wanting to diversify vendors, but also seeing scholars saying that diversification of vendors might not be possible. So that's also another argument we have to look at.
I want to ask about that. Is Open RAN a good idea for developing countries or a bad idea because it's simply so uncertain? In principle, it would let them deal with multiple vendors, and that would probably be good.
I think it would, my instinct is, I think it would be a good thing, but I have to do more research on that.
That's a great research question, Greg, because I think that's the crux of the issue.
Right.
And again, because if they're going to have to save costs, the cheaper vendor is China. And the cheaper vendor is the one turnkey approach that gives them less flexibility. So
Right.
I think that's a really, we're narrowing down, I think, on the real research questions for looking forward that are very important.
And I think the same question is raised with digital corridors. In fact, I was studying them more this week. I'm looking at it. It seems that China very strategically bundles things together. And there is this infrastructure and applications on top of it that creates a lot of dependency. More concerning is the data collected, especially with Chinese increasing presence in e-government and smart cities, which are sold to developing countries along the way. So I think these all projects are converging very nicely in terms of understanding infrastructure and applications that are sitting on top of infrastructure and how they create dependency for a long time to come. So next project, if Darius is here, maybe it's time. No, okay. He actually uploaded interesting slideshow, but we wait for him to come. So next, Dan, would you?
Edward, Ed, you had something you wanted to say about that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Pari was saying, this concept of digital colonialism that I've been reading up on. And there's a book in particular by Nanjala Nyambola that looks at this occurring in Kenya. And it's very interesting how you described, Pari, the layering of different types of technologies. For example, e-government, but it's not only e-government, it's also the collection of data, particularly from the healthcare system. That seems to be a very interesting layer. Just wanted to add Nanjala Nyambola.
Yeah, there is a lot of military information that could be actually captured and also citizens' information, and they're all very concerning, very, very concerning, especially with the smart cities as well. So next, Dan, would you like to talk about your project?
Yeah, so we finished the citations for our paper this week, and then me and Kai separately, and I just added this to the folder, but we took his section because there was a lot of material there and we moved it to a different document so we could work on it separately. And we've been able to trim away a good amount, but keep a lot of kind of the core information that's important. And I guess probably like the most interesting and important part of the research he's done on regulation is we've had multiple administrations who have kind of, especially the Clinton administration, have put forward, I guess I would call it policy, but it's mostly just recommendations to the private sector of how they can keep their networks secure. But there's no actual hard regulation or any form of like, there's no government protection to any of these. Like it's not offered to private industry, obviously, because they're private. So that's kind of like the interesting factor that we're trying to point out is that although there's like been these things that look really good on paper, there's not any actual like regulation or anything forcing the private industry to meet a certain level of security.
And have you worked on your presentation, Dan?
Yeah, I have. So would you like me to add my slides to the actual like slide doc that you shared with all of us, or would you like to keep it separate?
separate, and if you can upload it to your folder so we can all see it and make comments if we see something is missing, there's a question to add. And also, please, when you create your presentation, make sure they're not too compact, too much information, written, because people can't read it. So the best is just to put keywords and
Okay.
explain those keywords.
Yeah, great. I can do that.
And probably
Yeah.
we're still looking for about 5 slides, something like that.
Yeah, I put a document with guidelines in terms of how we like it to be. And yeah, it would be good if you look at that document. It's very short. It's, I think, 1 or 2 page, but it would help.
Because your template is very complete, but it's basically different kinds of slides for different purposes. No
Yeah.
sense that any presentation will have all of those things.
No.
They're just things for you to choose from, basically, depending on what you want your presentation to look like.
Exactly. And you can always edit it. Go to edit master document, and you can change anything you want in terms of size. Anyway, Maura, any comments?
Yeah, Dan, I did finally get back to you and Kai, and we haven't had a chance to meet yet. I'm glad you've uploaded the documents. I want to look at them, and I'd love to meet with you guys again if you can this week. You also are going to want to be very aware of the huge forward movement being made on the Hill now in discussions about actually implementing new laws and regulations. Now, as we know, a lot of discussion before it's going to happen, but I think what's really good about this is the nod to the current hearings as a result of the 2 major hacks of SolarWinds and Hafnium, that Senator Warner and the SSCI and the hearings on the Hill, they're really beginning to coalesce around a potential package of ideas. And so we now, I think, need to get into high gear to move into a proposal to study, because input for that package, this is so timely. So we're going to want to nod to the NTSB approach, to the mandatory but limited liability reporting, that will be just a nod in the recommendations and say, this is what we need to study to help support this. And there is also a real forward recognition that some sort of international norm around prohibited sabotage against critical infrastructure, that the US might actually be willing to lead the way on this. So again, we all understand it could be a year or 2 before any of this is implemented, but the discussions are happening. So getting a proposal in to get us in on the ground floor of these new and exciting discussions, we need to kick your guys' project into high gear just as you're finishing your semester and your thesis, of course, so it's not like you don't have anything else to do, but I want to meet and have us talk about, and I will focus very heavily on what you guys have written this afternoon, so that we could meet early in the week if you guys can clear some time. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, and Jennifer has done a lot of good work that I think that could help, because yeah, that's also looking at the hacking that happened recently. So I think there's a convergence here as well in terms of projects that you guys are doing, and yeah, how it will impact everything.
Yeah, Jennifer is not here, and you said she was not going to be, I think, but I did look at her stuff so far. I sent her and you a note. I know you guys are doing a meeting on Wednesday. I could join you, or she and I could look before. I've asked her to point me to all her research so that I can look through it, because again, there was a wonderful cybersecurity summit this week where people talked about some of this cutting edge stuff. I mean, it was the who's who of cyber policy. And there were I heard some wonderful discussions, some of which are on the record and some of which are not. But you're right, there's absolute opportunity there. And I just want to make sure Jennifer's in the right place too. I suggested some ways for her to organize her presentation as well, that she and I will, I haven't seen her research yet, so we'll have to discuss, but I think she could be very, very helpful in sort of getting it very concise so that people can see what's what in 3 slides.
Yeah.
So
Her presentation looked to me good, but it was looking on the long side. So that'll be the challenge. There's an awful lot of stuff to say in 10 minutes. So
Well, and her note was to me, to Pari and me in the channel was, you know, how I need some help and how do I organize this? And I came up with some ideas for her, but since she and I haven't yet been able to have a dialogue and I have not read her background research, we'll do that before we get back to you and she does some more work on it. But I think she's got she can do a great, short, sharp, very informative piece of a presentation that will help a lot of people understand the two hacks and where we're going.
Yeah, great. So next, James, would you like to talk about your project?
Sure. So I did the rough draft on my paper so far. And I saw both the comments that you and Mata made on it. So I'll be making edits. Obviously, there's basic grammar and spelling that needs to be done. There should be more citations within the paper, although there was some. I saw the comments you guys made. If possible, I'd like to schedule some time next week, preferably earlier in the week, after I've made some edits and revisions, just to kind of review that again. But it is moving along. And then just on another note, is it okay if I'd use Canva as like my tool for presentations?
I like to keep the branding the same shape. You can use any platform you want, but try to keep the coloring, the cover, the end similar. But you can use anything you want, you know, just bring them in and use it in terms of editing.
Sure, of course. I'll make sure the logos and the colors and all that's all the same. Yeah.
So, and in terms of meeting, yes, sure. As soon as you're ready, just reach to us and me and Maura are happy to, you know, to join, to have a meeting. So any comments, Greg?
No, I guess I'm still a little uncertain whether this is going to be a kind of a hill length article or the beginning of a big research paper, or is it going to turn into a proposal at some stage, or maybe all of those? I don't know. Anyway, it's good stuff. It's coming along.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think I need to change the title. Currency of last resort isn't quite fitting, I think. As it stands, the intent is for it to be a proposal. However, I can also see how it could easily be converted into an article as well.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think personally I like to see it as a proposal and research rather than article. And there isn't enough research yet to it as it stands, or at least the way you cite it, to turn it to research. But we can, you know, work on it. Yeah, it's a very good direction. Yes, Maura.
I see it as a proposal, James, and you've come a long way. But yes, you saw my comments. We still need to turn some of the arguments on their head to look at, I mean, the downside of cryptocurrency. Again, I mean, frankly, it was really interesting to hear a lot of these cybersecurity leaders saying ransomware is as important as APTs and sabotage and espionage, because the cost to the United States, I mean, the cost to our municipalities, and ransomware wouldn't exist if it weren't for cryptocurrency. So it's a huge, again, turning it on its head to say maybe there's a form of regulation that can help us attack this problem as well. So I think that's where the research to you've got all the problems in there now, they're great. Now we just have to tighten it up as to what's the research focused and why does this research matter? And then I think you're going to be ready as well to move it to a proposal. So I think we're making great progress. We just still need to hone down on the where we're going and what we want to do, but great progress.
Yeah, and James, I think before I forget, not for your presentation, but after your presentation, I think at one point I like to see a study of how quantum computing gonna impact blockchain, because that's gonna have a huge impact on cryptocurrency. So have a look, and it will be very interesting report to understand the impact between the two. Also, it's not going to happen for next 10 years, but still, if it's going to turn it around, it's important to understand that space as well.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look at. I think what I'm focusing on now, at least to me, is a bit more interesting in terms of government regulation.
Yeah.
I'd say quantum computing will revolutionize a lot of different industries, but as far as cryptocurrency goes, a lot of these innovators are already thinking of these problems, which is why most new blockchains, a lot of them are moving to a proof of stake concept, where computational power will not be the means to mine. So the only one that actually have an effect, as like when they do the Ethereum update, will actually be Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is meant to recalibrate every, I think, 2 weeks in terms of difficulty. So it's worth looking into. It could be absolutely worth an article or not. But as far as quantum computing within the cryptocurrency space, someone would make a lot of money in 2 weeks, and then essentially the whole system would adjust. But definitely worth looking into that a bit more.
Okay, if you had any interesting sources, please send it to me.
Sure.
Thanks. Any comment, Greg, Mauro?
No more. I think it really is awfully good work, and lots there.
Thank you.
Eduardo, any comments?
No comments, thanks.
Okay, then next, I think, I don't know who is here.
Darius has joined us, so
Okay, Darius, welcome. So maybe you can talk about your project, Darius.
Yeah, sure. So as of late, I haven't been the busiest on the digital corridor project, if I'm being honest, but I did get a chance to put a presentation together, and I actually practiced like what I was gonna say, and I talked really fast, but I kept it under 10 minutes. But yeah,
the presentation was good, Darius. Your challenge will be to awful lot to say in not too much time, and you always say a lot, so trying to keep it in 10 minutes is
yeah,
your challenge.
from class.
Yeah.
My other than that, I think that more broadly for my project to actually keep its momentum going is like I feel like I need to sort of do what the presentation is doing in sort of like aggregate, like compiling all my work together into one cohesive thing, like a paper or a proposal. So I think that's going to be my next step moving forward after
Presentation.
I think the main areas of my research that are still missing is that mapping aspect that we were talking about earlier, as well as just like a more technical analysis of exactly what's going on in building the corridor. So yeah, those are, I think, like my main two sort of gaps in knowledge thus far.
Yeah, about technical issue, earlier in this meeting, we talked about it when we were discussing the 5G project. It seems there is a lot of strategic thinking behind the technology provided for these corridors, not just infrastructure, and also the applications that are layering over it. Eduardo provided a link, which you can look at it in the chat section. And yeah, there's a lot of strategic thinking going on in terms of creating dependency in long term. So it's important to look at what are they, especially when it comes to e-government, that's software that China is providing, and also smart city softwares that are provided in this space, but also other kind of applications that are sitting on top of the infrastructure, plus the infrastructure itself. Any comments, Greg? Yeah, go on, Darius.
No, I was just saying that sounds really interesting. Eduardo, is that in your research folder or anything like that? Because
in the chat.
I just put
He
the book
can't see, he can't see it in the chat because he joined after it was sent. You can't see anything in the chat that was sent before he joined. So if Eduardo, if you would resend it, either that or I've got it and I can send it to you, Dariush.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also,
Any comment?
yeah, you mentioned there's a mapping component that needs to be done. I'm in a spatial science graduate program and I have access to a lot of like geospatial data analysis programs that if you needed like this done, and it's a pretty like moderate task, I can definitely do it.
Oh, well, we put out a job request for this to get somebody out of your program, Dan. And if you're going to be hanging around, I mean, this is something Greg and Pari and I need to talk about offline, how we put it out. And I mean, I need to talk it up to some of the professors. I think the problem is that we're in midterms in the end of the semester and getting a student applicant right now, the timing may be all wrong. But we may need to, you know, if you think you're going to have time once you're done this project and you think you have the skills, let's have you look at the requirements, because Colonel Fleming has said that we can use the SSI capabilities that the students have access to if the student has the capability. And so if we keep it in-house and you want to do it, that sounds great. So I'll be sure to send you the job thing to look at, and then Greg, Pari, and I can also talk offline to see if you know there's another way to whip up some other students if your skills are not yet there and you're still in the learning mode as we move forward. But yeah, I think this mapping piece, we've got to get the resource to get it done, because I think, Dariush, again, you and I'll sit down and look at some of the research, but seeing it visually arrayed is going to be as impactful as thinking about the geopolitical pieces of the potential digital colonialization or control that might be exerted by whoever builds it, by just seeing the geography and all the pieces overlaid on the geography. So I'm anxious to move that forward. And Dan, if you're a viable volunteer, once you're done the other stuff, that'd be fabulous. If that's work.
Yeah, that would be great if you could do that, Dan. Thank you. So I think Carmen is not here. Am I right?
Right, she's not.
You are correct.
Okay, then I think the last project is the election project. Combate has been working on his thesis and he has been absent. He wants to be absent up to mid-April, which I agreed to. So Megan is doing a good job. And Firuza, I can see you are here. So have you been in contact with Megan? Are you involved with Megan's work?
No, I just haven't been in contact with Megan, but I finally got in communication with Combate. I had been posting a couple of different links on Slack, interesting panels on democracy, not particularly related to digital aspect of it, but concepts like a benevolent dictator, for instance, which is a big thing when people talk about Africa. So finally got an email from Combate saying April 15th, until April 15th, I'm kind of out of commission. So I'm kind of like looking forward to see where this thing is going, but it's kind of like quiet on the front. I also found out Joy is no longer also on the project because she's found a different job. And so kind of like on a kind of a quiet.
No, Joy basically has finished her project. However, if we need her to do anything, she's prepared to do. But at this stage, she's finished. So I think the Lebanon project is waiting for Maura to look at it and restructure it. It needs a lot of editing. The part Joy written has a lot of grammar issues and language issues. So it needs to be corrected before we can publish it. That's why we're not publishing, because we need to make sure it is up to a standard before we publish the paper. So there's the structural issues, and then there is grammar and language issues. Once it's done, it will be published. Yeah, and election, as you know, Megan is working on digital aspect of it. And yeah, we probably gonna go forward with that project until Combate comes back with the digital aspect
So
of it.
on the Megan and you guys' side, has there been sort of like a refining of the project to see how we are going to look at the election component with respect to the elections in Africa, or still kind of looking for ways to tackle this?
I think we're still looking for ways to tackle it. I think the research that Megan has done has indicated this. I think we discussed this last week, that what she needs to do on the digital piece is she needs to now go compile her research, and we need to choose a couple representative countries to look at individual case studies that represent different kinds of levels of digital issues in Africa. And then that will be the focus for something that she will do. And then if Combate comes back with material that we can integrate that into, great. Because the problem that we have in the sub-Saharan Africa is 52 countries, that they're so different that our research is showing us that there may not be one integrated project. There may have to be 2 or 3 different projects, one that focuses on the digital aspect that will not have the kind of panel data that Combate is seeking, because it simply doesn't exist because the countries are too disparate. So I think that is what we've learned so far. And so there will probably be a piece that looks at the digital, and then there may be a piece that looks at these other democratic factors that are much less. There may be more panel data for Combate to work with that is more common across all countries. So I think I want to push Megan to move forward with the digital piece and to write something on the digital piece and to propose some sort of study looking at a couple of countries that then I think, Feroze, we can go back and look at, you know, perhaps in a broader way. But we've got to narrow down. Our research has demonstrated that we've got to sort of recast the direction we're going in. So I think that's,
wait and see what emerges out of that.
I think talking to Megan might be very helpful if you and Megan and I know Megan is not here, and I want to look at her new stuff, but it might be very helpful if you and she and I have a brainstorming session on what she's done so far with your election experience to help us narrow down which the country case studies might be. I think that would be that's our next step for her. Greg, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, last time we talked a little bit about the selection criteria for cases, and I thought that the 2 we talked about seemed good to me. One was penetration rates. So we want to have a variety on that score. And then also the other was times they've interrupted service for election purposes. What struck me about her first pass was that was a big, wide range. I mean, there were some countries like Ethiopia that had done this over and over again, others not so much. So that would be if we could do 5 or 6 kind of thumbnail sketches of countries along those dimensions, and maybe another dimension or 2 we'll think about as you get into it. That'd be great.
Exactly. Thank you, Greg, for taking my long stuff and doing your Nick business, which is let's put it all in a couple of sentences of where we need to go. So I think that's exactly 5 to 6.
Penetration and interruption. Yeah.
Penetration, right. Interruption. Yes, exactly.
Right. And 5 to 6 thumbnails and maybe 2 or 3 other variables, because Megan she's looked at some other things that we might be able to slice and dice. So I think we have a way forward that Greg has articulated, and I'll reach out to Megan and see if we can, put together a meeting, and maybe by Sunday next, we can actually have a proposal of what those variables might be and which countries we're looking at. That would be a great step forward.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? No. Okay, I think, is there any other issue anyone wants to discuss?
Or maybe we want to raise about next week?
Well, also Eduardo hasn't had a chance to speak.
Oh, yeah.
If there's anything he wants to talk about his research.
Yeah,
Sure.
I just wanted to update everybody on some books that I read that have, I think, maybe of interest to folks here. The first is a book called Future Proof by Kevin Roos, 9 Rules to Protect Your Job from Automation. and another is by Virginia Eubanks, and it's called Automating Inequality. As you all know, I'm starting a book. I remember one of my professors as an undergrad, I asked him, what do you need to do to write a book? And he said, you have to read a lot of books first. So I'm in that process.
Good advice.
Yeah.
But I found them very fascinated, and I just wanted to share what I think is the key takeaway. The Kevin Roos book in particular talks about this thing called bureaucratic bots, which are algorithmic technologies that are used in government in ways that it sounds boring, so we don't know or not spoken about in the media. But there's many decisions, far more than I had expected to discover, that are made automatically by government. And this can concern everything from like benefits to jail sentences to healthcare, even if you're likely, because of a statistical model, to fit a certain stereotypical profile, you may be alienated from your children. And this is happening now, and there's families that are dealing with this, and it's all automated. So there's, I think, a huge issue, a huge moral question that is starting to emerge on the horizon, which Virginia Eubanks in the book Automating Inequality really pinpoints, because it seems that these bureaucratic bots are particularly used against poor people or for
societies.
So there's a lot of issues of discrimination, and obviously there's a way in which these bots, bureaucratic bots, and I think that's an interesting term, are used as a way to distance ourselves ethically from many decisions that we make as a society, so that we can kind of hide under the rug some of the uglier aspects of our society by, saying these are done automatically, so we're not doing it as a society. So I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention these interesting 2 points from these 2 books.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Nicole Lee Turner. Carnegie or CSIS or Atlantic Council, I can't remember which. She's also a leading light on this algorithmic bias, and she has she's written a couple of books. She testifies routinely on the Hill, and she now has Tech Tank podcast that's through her think tank. I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a complete blank as to which think tank she's with, but Nicole Lee Turner. And she also publishes on this subject of algorithmic bias and the whole problems. And you might take a look at some of her work as well, Eduardo, because she's right up there with these guys, who I will certainly be taking a look at a couple of these, because you're right. It's a leading at the whole question of algorithms and algorithmic transparency in government. And yes, the decisions that are made about government programs, and many government programs deal with marginalized people to begin with, because government assistance, that's who it goes to. And almost all of these programs have algorithms embedded in them that we don't know who wrote them, we don't know what's in them, and we don't know what the criteria is, but decisions are being made and have been being made for years already on this. It's really a very deep ethical problem. So it's a fascinating subject matter. So thanks for bringing us those to our attention.
Yeah.
If you want to write up a little book review in public and put it into your folder for us to think about, we would all appreciate that. Or if you need a researcher to do some of those book reviews for you, we might, this kind of information there's a whole future in this. And of course, we have the Dan and Carmen team doing algorithmic issues that I think there's going to be a great deal of convergence on that as well, although they're not here today to talk. Pari, I know you've been talking with them.
Yeah, their project is actually algorithmic decision making. Right now, they're going to focus on military kind of aspect of it. They're looking at conflict prevention, but they have worked in other aspects as well, and that's going to be quite interesting project. And I'm sure Eduardo could have a lot of feedback for them and guide them in many ways in terms of looking at various aspects of it. And Dan also is working on machine learning. There's another foundation he's involved, and we're looking at it. They're all quite interesting and coming together on that one. AI and machine learning.
I
Okay.
have a quick thing I wanted to say on an unrelated note, something completely different. I'll be participating at a meeting in Italy this summer discussing the COVID passports. And I was wondering if anybody from this forum might be interested in speaking. It's done with the John Cabot University, where I studied as an undergraduate. I'm part of their Guarini Institute for Public Affairs, and we're putting together this panel of 7 or 8 experts. So if anybody from this network or anybody you have in mind might be interested in speaking, we're going to have like a kind of hybrid online video conferencing in-person conference this summer in Italy. So it'd be great if any of you are interested in having participating as a panelist on this topic. COVID passports.
COVID passports.
Sorry, go on, Greg.
No, I'm just going to ask again what the subject is: COVID passports, right?
But yeah, what aspects of COVID passports? Could you expand on it?
Yeah, the ethical, legal, and I think even like the practical, technical aspects. Mm-hmm. But I thought it'd be perfect for this forum since, it is geopolitics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Would be good if you send us an email with a link to the organization, and I'm sure some of us would be more than happy to talk there. In fact, similar topic has been raised in ICANN, where I am there in ALAC. And we're looking at, again, these passports and what it means for movement within European Union. So, because there is some increasing resistance towards vaccines and how this is going to play out in the movement of people within the countries. So that could be also interesting to add to this panel. But if you send us a link, I appreciate very much. And we get back to you on that.
Will do. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you. Any other issue anybody wants to raise?
Elmira just joined us. Yeah.
Too late, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much time do we have? Let me see. Yeah, 45. Okay. Hi, Elmira. Maybe you want to quickly talk about your project. Also, we are almost ending the meeting, but you can brief everybody about what you have been doing.
Hi, I'm sorry for being late because last time I was waiting for a long time and I don't know what happened. I was not able to connect it. Anyway, as I have sent the email, I have summarized what I have done. And I have calculated that I have concluded that it's better to search about green technology. I will not just be so brief. That is why I'm not talking about what I have done before. What I'm talking about, just the thing that I have reached is that it's better to talk to search about the green technology that is more focused these days by companies. Actually, I have not done finish this year and this week because I was not sure if it's okay or not, because I have not I need your actually permission, but I did not receive it. Receive it. And the only thing was that if it's okay, I can continue with green technology and roll up data and data analysis in this part.
Sounds good to me. And yes, you will receive feedbacks. Maybe we should have a meeting. Maura, any comments?
Absolutely, Elmira. I'm sorry, I'm still catching up. And so while I saw your material, I have not yet had a chance to read it, but it is on my list of things to catch up with this week. So let us get you some feedback and then see where we go from here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it. That's okay.
Sure. Greg?
I had a quick read too, and I think this sounds like a good way to proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other issue anyone wants to raise? In terms of next week, I think, Greg, if you allow me, I would send an email so everybody could mark what they want. And if they want to replace it, if we want to just miss a meeting or what we want to do, and then we make a decision based on majority's vote. Is that okay?
Sounds fine. Yeah, sounds fine. Sounds great.
All right. Any
Just
other
in case-
issue?
Right, just in case anybody cares that next Sunday happens to be Easter. I mean,
Yeah.
as we pointed out before some of you joined in, with COVID, it may not make any difference whatsoever. And people may be, so we give you guys the ability to weigh in. But if we don't do the meeting on Sunday, just so everybody knows, we will need to be sure that we have meetings with people to review presentations before you go forward. So the cost of not meeting on Sunday is meeting some other time. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not just going away. So that's the trade-off.
Yeah, and especially because there's a presentation in a way, so we need to focus. Anyway, we will see how it comes. So any other comment, any issue? No? Okay, then, well, thank you, everybody. Wish you a wonderful week ahead, and we will be in touch. Thank you.
Great. Have a
Bye-bye.
Good week,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good
Bye.
week. Bye.
Bye.
I
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello. It's just me and you now. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You look terrific, as always.
Thank you. Thank you. You look good too. And are we being recorded or did you stop
So
recording?
we are being recorded, yes. I mean,
We are being recorded?
yeah,
Oh.
so
Oh, then you got to cut the last part, please.